The appraiser's hands shook as she lifted the canvas away from its backing. Ms. Reeves, do you understand what this is? Natalie stared at the yellowed parchment, at the signatures crawling across the bottom like spiders. She'd been holding this painting for 3 weeks, carrying it on the bus, leaning it against her apartment wall next to the eviction notice. I don't. This is the original Louisiana Purchase Treaty. The one that's been missing since 1895. That was 4 days ago. 3 weeks earlier, Natalie stood in the funeral home parking lot, watching her sister Lauren load their father's belongings into a BMW. The mahogany desk went first. Then the leather chair, the one Dad had sat in every Sunday doing crosswords. The antique clock. The collection of first edition Hemingways. You sure you don't want anything? Lauren called, not looking up from her phone as movers hauled out a credenza. Natalie thought of her studio apartment in the worst part of town. The furniture would never fit. I'm good. Oh wait, almost forgot. Lauren disappeared into the funeral home and returned with a painting under her arm. She held it away from her body like it smelled. Dad left this specifically to you. It was in his will. The river painting goes to Natalie. She snorted. I mean, I'm getting the house and the stocks, so I guess he felt guilty. The painting was maybe 2 feet by 3 feet. The frame cheap would paint it gold. The canvas showed a muddy river, crude brushstrokes suggesting trees and sky. No signature Natalie could see. It looked like something from a roadside motel. It's hideous, Lawrence said. He bought it at an estate sale 20 years ago. Paid like $50. God knows why he kept it. Natalie took the painting. It was lighter than she expected. Thanks. Seriously, Nat, you can throw it away. I won't tell anyone. Lauren's phone buzzed. That's the estate lawyer. I have to go finalize the paperwork. You need anything? Money. The offer landed like a slap. Natalie had $94 in her checking account. Rent was $650, due yesterday. She worked data entry from home for $13 an hour and weekend shifts at a call center. Her car had died 6 months ago. She took the bus everywhere, including to her father's funeral. I'm fine, Natalie said. Lauren hugged her. Quick, perfunctory, smelling of expensive perfume. Love you. Let's do lunch soon. They both knew they wouldn't. Natalie carried the painting to the bus stop. A woman with a stroller glanced at it. Garage sale find? Something like that. At home, Natalie propped the painting against the wall beside her futon. The eviction notice was taped to the door, bright orange, impossible to ignore. 72 hours. She'd already asked for extensions twice. Her landlord, Mr. Kovac, had been sympathetic but firm. You're a good tenant, but I got bills too. She heated a can of soup and ate standing up, looking at the painting. It really was ugly. The river looked more like a brown smear. The trees were blocky, childish. Why had Dad left this to her specifically? He'd been a history professor, precise about everything. He didn't do random. Natalie pulled out her laptop and Googled how to tell if a painting is valuable. The articles talked about signatures, provenance, condition. She examined the frame. Thin wood, amateur construction. The canvas had a water stain in one corner. No signature anywhere. But there was something odd about the backing. The brown paper covering the rear of the frame bubbled slightly, like something was underneath. Natalie's phone rang. The call center, asking if she could pick up extra hours. Yes, she said immediately. When? Tonight, 6 to midnight. Minimum wage plus 50 cents. She'd been awake since 5 a.m. She had data entry due at 2 p.m. tomorrow. 6 hours of sleep, maybe, if she was lucky. I'll be there. After the call, she sat on the futon and looked at the painting again. Dad's last gift. The only thing he'd left her while Lauren got everything else. There had to be a reason. She found a butter knife in the kitchen drawer and carefully pried up the staples holding the backing paper. The paper was brittle, tearing at the edges. Underneath was the canvas, the wooden stretcher bars, and a piece of paper. Folded, yellowed with age, tucked between the canvas and the backing. Natalie pulled it out with shaking hands. It crinkled like dead leaves. She unfolded it on her kitchen counter under the fluorescent light. The handwriting was old-fashioned, elaborate. French words she didn't understand. And at the bottom, signatures. James Monroe, Robert Livingston, François Barmarbois. Her heart hammered. She pulled out her phone and photographed the document, then Googled James Monroe's signature Louisiana Purchase. The first result was a Smithsonian article about the missing treaty. The original Louisiana Purchase Agreement, signed in 1803, had been lost in a fire at the State Department in 1895. Only copies remained. Historians had searched for decades. The original was considered one of the most significant missing documents in American history. The signatures in the photograph matched the ones on her counter exactly. Natalie sat down hard. Her hands were shaking. This couldn't be real. It couldn't. But what if it was? She thought of Lauren in the BMW, dismissing the ugly painting. She thought of her father, who'd taught American history for 40 years, who dragged her to museums every weekend as a kid, who'd bought this painting at an estate sale and never told anyone what was inside. She thought of the eviction notice, the $94 in her account, the call center shift starting in 3 hours. And she thought, everything just changed. Natalie called in sick to the call center. First shift she'd missed in 18 months. Then she sat awake all night, the document on her kitchen counter, Googling everything she could find about the Louisiana Purchase Treaty. The original had been signed in Paris on April 30th, 1803. It transferred 827,000 square miles from France to the United States for $15 million, roughly 4 cents per acre. It doubled the size of the country overnight. Thomas Jefferson called it the greatest achievement of his presidency. The treaty had 3 parts, the main agreement and 2 conventions. All 3 were kept at the State Department until 1895, when a filing room fire destroyed dozens of original documents. The Louisiana Purchase Treaty was listed among the losses. Historians had mourned it for over a century. If this was real, Natalie was holding $15 million worth of land transferred with a quill pen and wax seal. Except the land wasn't worth $15 million anymore. It was 13 states, cities, farms, oil fields, trillions of dollars of economic value. And the document itself? Natalie found an article about the Declaration of Independence. One of the original signed copies sold at auction in 2000 for $8.14 million. But there were multiple signed declarations. This was the only Louisiana Purchase Treaty, the only one in existence. She called the Smithsonian at 9 a.m. sharp. National Museum of American History. How may I direct your call? I need to speak to someone about document authentication. I think I have, she paused. How did you say this without sounding insane? I think I found something historical. They transferred her 4 times. Finally, a woman with a crisp voice answered, Dr. Sarah Kwan, Chief Curator of Political History. You have a document you'd like authenticated. Natalie explained haltingly. The painting, the backing, the signatures. With each sentence, she expected laughter. Instead, silence. Ms. Reeves, I need you to describe exactly what you're looking at. Natalie read the French text aloud, stumbling over pronunciation. She described the signatures, the wax seals, the watermark in the paper. Stop. Dr. Kwan's voice was sharp. Don't touch it again. Don't photograph it with flash. Don't. Have you told anyone about this? No. Good. Keep it that way. I'm coming to you today. Where are you located? Baltimore. I'll be there by 2 o'clock. Ms. Reeves, if this is what I think it is, you're about to become a very important person. If you're invested in Natalie's story, subscribe now, because what comes next will test everything she thought she knew about value and family. Dr. Kwan arrived with 2 assistants and equipment cases. She wore white gloves and handled the document like it might dissolve. She photographed it under special lighting. She examined the paper composition with a portable microscope. She compared the signatures to authenticated samples on her laptop. The whole time, Natalie stood in her tiny kitchen, feeling like an intruder in her own life. Ms. Reeves, how did your father acquire the painting? Estate sale, my sister said. 20 years ago. Do you know whose estate? No. He never mentioned it. Dr. Kwan made notes. The paper is consistent with early 19th century French diplomatic stock. The ink composition matches samples from the period. The handwriting. She looked up, her eyes bright. I need to take this for full analysis. But preliminarily, I'm 90% certain this is authentic. Natalie's legs went weak. What does that mean? It means you found the most significant missing document in American history. Museums will fight over this. Collectors will offer astronomical sums. The historical value is incalculable. But what's it worth? In dollars. Dr. Kwan smiled. Conservatively? At auction, with the right marketing, you're looking at a minimum of $150 million. Possibly much more. The number hit Natalie like a physical blow. She sat down on the futon, her vision tunneling. Ms. Reeves? Are you all right? I'm being evicted in 60 hours, Natalie whispered. I have $94. I was going to sleep in my car, except my car's dead. Dr. Kwan's expression softened. You won't be evicted. I promise you that. But we need to move the document to a secure facility immediately. Once word gets out, and it will, your life is going to change dramatically. They packed the document in an archival case. Dr. Kwan left one assistant, Marcus, to guard the painting itself. The provenance matters. We need to trace how it ended up at that estate sale. After they left, Natalie sat in silence. Marcus stood by the door, professional and quiet. Her phone buzzed. Lauren, lunch next week? I'm thinking that new French place downtown. The French place with $40 entrees. Lauren's way of being generous without actually helping. Natalie texted back, can't. Busy. Then she called her landlord. Mr. Kovac? It's Natalie Reeves. I need to talk about the rent. Natalie, I'm sorry, but I can pay. In full. Today. And next month. And the month after. She paused. I've come into some money. Silence. Then, you serious? Completely. She hung up and transferred her last $94 to buy groceries. Real groceries, not ramen and canned soup. She'd have the rent money soon. Dr. Kwan had promised in advance against authentication. That night, Natalie lay on the futon and thought about her father. He'd known. He must have. But why hide it? Why not tell her? Or donate it to a museum himself? Then she remembered something. A conversation 10 years ago, right after she'd dropped out of college because she couldn't afford tuition. Dad had been disappointed but understanding. Sometimes value isn't obvious right away, he'd said. Sometimes you have to wait for the right moment. He'd been waiting for her to need it most. The tears came sudden and hot. Dad had known she'd struggle, that Lauren would get the easy inheritance while Natalie got the fighting chance. He'd trusted her to recognize what mattered, just like he'd recognized it at an estate sale 2 decades ago. Thank you, she whispered to the empty room. I see it now. I finally see it. The authentication took 6 days. Dr. Kwan called Natalie every evening with updates, her voice progressively more excited. Spectroscopy confirmed the ink's age. Paper analysis matched French diplomatic stock from 1803. Handwriting experts verified the signatures against known samples. The wax seals were genuine, complete with period-accurate composition. On day 7, Dr. Kwan delivered the final verdict in person. It's real. 100% authenticated. Natalie, you own the original Louisiana Purchase Treaty. They sat in Natalie's apartment, newly cleaned, rent paid for 3 months in advance. Dr. Kwan had brought champagne, which felt surreal. Natalie never drank champagne. She drank grocery store wine when she could afford it. What happens now? That's her choice. The Smithsonian wants to acquire it for the National Collection. We're prepared to offer $120 million. Alternatively, we can facilitate a private auction. Christie's estimates it could bring $150 to $200 million, possibly more. Natalie's head spun. The Smithsonian offer is guaranteed? Yes. And we display it permanently, free to the public. Your father was a history professor, correct? He'd probably appreciate it being accessible to students and researchers. He would. Natalie thought of Dad dragging her through museum exhibits, pointing out original documents in glass cases. See that, Nat? That's history you can touch. Well, not literally, but you know what I mean. Can I think about it? Of course. Take a week. After Dr. Kwan left, Natalie pulled out her phone and stared at Lauren's contact. She'd been avoiding her sister's calls. For text in the past week. Where are you? Is everything okay? Did you fall off the planet? She should tell her. They were family. But the memory of Lauren's laugh, it's hideous, echoed in her head. Instead, Natalie called the National Museum of American History and scheduled a meeting. Then she called a lawyer, a real estate attorney Dr. Kwan had recommended, and asked about setting up a foundation. What kind of foundation? For first-generation college students. Full scholarships. No loans. The lawyer's voice warmed. That's wonderful. How much are you looking to endow it with? $50 million to start. Pause. I'll draft the paperwork. The Smithsonian held a press conference 2 weeks later. Natalie stood beside Dr. Kwan in a conference room packed with reporters, cameras flashing like strobe lights. Today, we're honored to announce the acquisition of the original Louisiana Purchase Treaty, missing since 1895 and recently discovered by Baltimore resident Natalie Reeves. The questions came rapid fire. How did you find it? What's it worth? What will you do with the money? Natalie answered carefully, sticking to the script Dr. Kwan had helped her prepare. But when a reporter asked, how does it feel to go from facing eviction to being worth over $100 million? She went off script. It feels like my father's still teaching me. He taught American history for 40 years. He believed everyone should have access to education and truth. This document represents the biggest land acquisition in our history, and it belongs to everyone. That's why I'm selling it to the Smithsonian, and that's why I'm using the proceeds to fund scholarships for students who can't afford college. The room erupted in applause. Lauren called 30 seconds after the press conference ended. Natalie, oh my God, I'm watching CNN, and there's a woman who looks just like you standing next to, wait, is that you? The Louisiana Purchase? The ugly painting. Natalie stepped into the hallway, away from the cameras. Yeah, Lauren, it's me. You sold it for $120 million. The news said $120 million. After taxes and legal fees, I'll net about 70. I'm putting 50 into a scholarship fund. Dad would have wanted that. Silence. Then, you're giving away $50 million. I'm investing it in people who need a chance. Like I needed one. Natalie. Lauren's voice cracked. I didn't know. When I gave you that painting, I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't. If I'd known, what? You would have kept it. Natalie felt surprisingly calm. It's okay, Lauren. Dad left it to me for a reason. He knew you'd get the house and the stocks. He knew I'd get the thing everyone thought was worthless. That's not fair. You're saying he loved you more. No. I'm saying he knew I'd understand what matters. And I do. She hung up gently. Not angry. Just done. 6 months later, Natalie stood in the National Museum of American History, watching schoolchildren crowd around the Louisiana Purchase Treaty in its climate-controlled case. A teacher read the placard aloud. On loan from the Smithsonian's permanent collection, acquired through the generosity of Natalie Reeves, daughter of Professor Michael Reeves, whose passion for history made this discovery possible. Beside the treaty was the painting, frame and all. The museum had insisted on displaying it, showing how the document had been hidden for over a century. Visitors could see the crude river scene, the cheap gold frame, and imagine walking past it at a garage sale without a second glance. Natalie's phone buzzed. The foundation director. First scholarship recipients announced today. 25 students. Full rides. You should see their essays. She smiled. 25 kids who wouldn't have to drop out like she had. Who wouldn't have to choose between textbooks and rent. Who'd get the chance she'd finally earned. Ms. Reeves, a museum staff member, approached. There's someone here to see you. Says she's your sister? Natalie found Lauren in the lobby, looking smaller than usual. No BMW. No designer bag. Just Lauren in jeans and a sweater, holding 2 coffees. Peace offering, Lauren said, extending one. Caramel latte. Your favorite. Natalie took it. They sat on a bench beneath a banner advertising the Louisiana Purchase exhibit. I've been thinking, Lauren said, about what Dad did. Leaving you the painting, leaving you the practical stuff. I thought it meant he didn't trust you with money. But that's not it, is it? No. He knew I'd be fine either way. I married money. I've got Ryan's tech income. The house and stocks were nice, but I didn't need them. She turned to Natalie. You needed a miracle. And he left you one. He left me a chance, Natalie corrected. I had to recognize what it was. Lauren nodded slowly. You're better at that than me. Seeing value. She sipped her coffee. I'm proud of you. What you're doing with the money, Dad would love it. You could help, Natalie said. The foundation. We need board members. People who understand what it's like to have advantages and what it means when you don't. I don't know anything about running a foundation. Neither did I 6 months ago. We'll figure it out together. Lauren's eyes filled. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They sat in comfortable silence, watching visitors stream toward the exhibit. Somewhere in that crowd were kids who'd receive scholarships next year, who'd stand in front of this document and know that someone believed they deserved a chance. That night, Natalie returned to her apartment, not the studio anymore, but a real 2-bedroom in a safe neighborhood. She hung one item on the wall, a photograph of her father in his study, surrounded by books, grinning at the camera. I get it now, Dad, she said softly. The ugly painting wasn't the gift. The gift was knowing I could see what others missed. Her laptop dinged. An email from the foundation. Scholarship applications were pouring in. Thousands of students with stories like hers. working multiple jobs, choosing between dreams and survival. She opened the first application and started reading. Outside, the city hummed with evening traffic. Inside, Natalie Reeves, former data entry clerk, former call center employee, former woman on the edge of eviction, began the work of changing lives. One overlooked person at a time, just like her father had changed hers.